Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and John Bolton is fired, or, well, as some say, resigns. A lot of people there's a lot of conflicting stories going on right now, but let's get to the news. I figured it would be best to do this live and get input from the audience, so make sure to send in your questions as well. Super chats go to the top and allow us to read your question on air. So as people start to tune in, I want to start to get into this because this is, well, it's historic. I mean, obviously, let's talk about the reality first. John Bolton is out and someone else will come in and they will be, advising Trump on the military-industrial complex. Replacing one puppet with another. But with that said, John Bolton, as we've been reporting for many, many years now here at WHAM, is probably one of the most psychotic, crazy war hawk politicians ever. I mean, he has been calling for annihilating countless countries around the world, which would involve killing millions of people, but he gets by with his fuzzy little mustache. And this is one of the issues that has been, even on the conservative side of things, people on the right, people who support Trump, have not been a fan of John Bolton. So to see him fired or to see him resign, it's really big news. And of course, Trump knows he can win points by saying, as we come up on the next election, I know already, that he fired John Bolton. But of course, John Bolton is saying that he actually resigned. So let's actually get to the original tweet that started this firestorm this morning, which I was not expecting to report on. I got out of bed first thing in the morning, boom, this hits the news. So let's see what it says here on Twitter. Donald Trump on Twitter said, "I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week." And of course, John Bolton wrote something a little bit different. He said, "I offered to resign last night, and President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow." Apparently, at the moment, Bolton is texting Fox News host, because he is a Fox contributor as well, go figure, saying that what Trump is saying isn't exactly true. He said, John Bolton, Kilmeade on Fox, John Bolton just texted me just now. He's watching. He said, "Let's be clear, I resigned." And there have been a few conflicting stories coming up. Of course, I'll get into that more in a moment, but I want to find all of these examples here because there are a few that are popping up. Robert Costa said, "Ambassador Bolton to me just now. I will have my say in due course, but I have given you the facts on the resignation. My sole concern is U.S. national security." Okay, yeah, it's U.S. national security, so blow up all the kids and cause massive blowback while arming rebels / terrorists. Anyway, John Bolton's a piece of work. We'll get into that in a moment, but there have been a lot of different accounts of this. As this Politico article says, Trump and Bolton offer conflicting accounts on his White House exit. The president says he asked for Bolton to leave. Bolton says he offered to resign on his own. Okay, here's where the distractions come, right, folks? President Donald Trump has ousted National Security Advisor John Bolton, asserting in a pair of surprise tweets Tuesday that he and the controversial aide disagreed strongly on matters of foreign policy. And I quote, "I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House," Trump wrote. "I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning," as I mentioned earlier, for those just tuning in. "I thank John very much for his service," the president continued, adding that he will name a new national security advisor sometime next week. But Bolton, who was scheduled to appear at a White House briefing later Tuesday afternoon alongside Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, offered a conflicting account on Twitter minutes after the Trump's post. It's worth pointing out which advisors have stuck around the whole time, and it always seems to do with money. Steven Mnuchin is one of the last standing people who is kind of one of the originals. And I quote, "I offered to resign last night and President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow," he wrote online. Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley confirmed that Charles Kupperman, the Deputy National Security Advisor, would replace Bolton on an acting basis, and went on to defend Trump's version events to reporters outside the White House. I could tell this article is written hastily. There's a lot of errors. And I quote, "The fact is the President of the United States asked John Bolton last night for his resignation. It was delivered today. He said John Bolton's priorities and policies just don't line up with the President's." Gidley insisted there is no one issue here and stressed that Trump and Bolton just didn't align on many issues. Bolton's departure follows a series of foreign policy schisms between the hawkish former United Nations envoy and the commander-in-chief, who has sought to de-escalate, sorry, that's weirdly written. Usually there's a dash, tensions with Iran and North Korea, with Bolton pursued more confrontational attack towards the U.S. Adversaries. Recent reports have also indicated Bolton had been largely sidelined in White House talks seeking to navigate an end to the war in Afghanistan, which imploded over the weekend after Trump announced he had aborted a planned round of negotiations at Camp David with Taliban leaders and the Afghan president. NBC News reported that Bolton, as well as Vice President Mike Pence, were opposed to the idea of such a summit, prompting Trump on Monday to dismiss the story as untrue. And I quote, "A lot of fake news is being reported that I overruled the VP and various advisors on potential Camp David meeting with the Taliban. This story is false," he wrote online, adding that the dishonest media likes to create the look of turmoil in the White House, of which there is none. But there's always something happening, like right after Trump says there's nothing happening. I have to say, I mean, like from Omarosa to the Mooch, I mean, there's been such a change of the guard over time, and now I'm not saying that he was wrong for doing this. Again, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in politics. I don't believe in this crazy scheme of collectivism, and of course this militarism is crazy, over the top, murdering millions of people. But with that said, it's always good to see a criminal get booted out, but how much of this is psychological warfare? How much of this is all planned? How much of this is part of some kind of script? And, you know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of theories about this. I will get back to Twitter to see what is coming up as we speak live here. There's lots happening. Of course, Senator Rand Paul, if I can find it here, says, "I commend Donald Trump for this necessary action. The president has great instincts on foreign policy and ending our endless wars. He should be served by those who share those views." Now, Rand Paul, of course, has been kind of trying to attach himself to Trump to spread a certain message. So good, you know, he's trying to infiltrate from the inside. That's cool and everything. I've spoken with Ron Paul about what Rand Paul is doing, and you know, I trust Ron Paul, but I can't say I trust Rand Paul. I'm not entirely sure. Ron Paul is a regular guest here at WHAM and big fan of his, but to say that Trump makes the right decisions, I know Ron Paul disagrees with that when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, there's still been, Trump at this point in his presidency has dropped more bombs on civilians than Obama had at this point in his presidency. Now, of course, Obama dropped more bombs than any other president, but Trump is working on beating that. Now, to say that Trump is pressing the button and saying, drop the bomb, is another thing. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there are bigger names at stake here that are really involved in doing these horrible things, like destroying lives and killing innocent civilians. But anyway, this is one of the #1 trending stories right now, and there's been a lot of updates happening. Annie Carney says Bolton was scheduled to do a White House briefing at 1:30 p.m. today. And then Mark Knoller says the Bolton firing comes just an hour after White House planned that Bolton would be taking part in a White House briefing. James Packard said, asked if Bolton's departure opens a door for a less aggressive approach with Iran, meeting with President Rouhani. Steve Mnuchin says the president, and Pompeo are all aligned in maximum pressure against Iran. Look, the script doesn't end. The CIA director and the guy involved in the finances of a huge racket of fraud. I mean, you know the agenda that is playing out here. Even Elizabeth Warren, who, I mean, I shouldn't say even Elizabeth Warren, the Democrats are huge warmongers, but says the American people are better off with John Bolton out of the White House. The world will be better off when the man who hired him in the first place is out too. So, of course, a double edge there. Ilhan Omar says, John Bolton has been one of the leading proponents of making the world a more dangerous place. Good riddance. Okay, so there we go. Bolton has also been one of those people heavily in favor of being involved in arming and funding these groups, these rebel groups, which turn into ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. And it's interesting to note that, this planned meeting with the Taliban was armed and funded by the U.S. government in the first place, and met with Reagan in the White House. And it's funny to see that these meetings are still happening. For those just tuning in right now, Super Chats go to the top, by the way, and allow us to get to your questions. We are taking questions during this live reporting, as this is breaking news, and we want to hear your opinion and get your thoughts on this report. But for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired, though John Bolton says he resigned. There are conflicting stories here, but one thing is for sure, John Bolton is out, and John Bolton has, as we've been reporting for many years here at WHAM, been one of the biggest warhawks, psychopathic criminals involved in this global military-industrial complex, and it's been another reason why a lot of Trump supporters even have been going, hey, I'm not supporting Trump if John Bolton is involved in this administration. So in a lot of ways, this is a good tactic for Trump to try and build up to the next election and get some of those libertarian-leaning, anyway, people who in a lot of ways he gained during the election against many odds. Very weird, because Trump has a lot of left-leaning policies, but then has been losing a lot of them due to warmongering, etc. I've seen this take place. It's interesting to note that John Bolton has probably been one of the most unpopular members of the Trump administration. So this is a guy who wanted to nuke North Korea, nuke Iran. There's a meme a while ago of that song Bomb Bomb Iran. It was just John Bolton, Bomb Bomb Iran, and it was him dressed as a musician or something. It's stupid. But I mean, this is a kind of culture that has been portrayed regarding John Bolton. He's become kind of like a laughingstock among most people. I mean, I honestly think he's terrifying, but he's been a laughingstock among a lot of people because he's just so over the top crazy and wants to bomb all of these countries, nuke countries, just destroy them. No conversations. Let's just get rid of them. And it's all part of that script. Create fear and create order out of chaos. And we've seen this prolonged military-industrial complex play out for so long now. We've seen this push towards all-out war with all these countries. We've heard the 7-country plan going back to General Wesley Clark all those years ago. John Bolton, as Rika, the hopeful voluntarist, is writing in the chat, says, he's nuts. He's crazy. He really is. And, I mean, when you see some of his quotes, he goes on Fox News often with a big smile on his face, big fuzzy mustache, ha ha ha, I'm your friendly neighbor who talks politics. No, he wants to nuke and kill millions of people. So, yeah, I mean, good riddance to see him gone. Good riddance to get him the hell out of that position of power. But I would say that this is not the end. I mean, who's going to replace him? Again, Mike Pompeo and Mnuchin, former CIA director, and, of course, Mnuchin, the man behind, behind, quote-unquote, he's a puppet, but behind the economy, say that they will keep the pressure on Iran, regardless of John Bolton being in. Like, people have asked, are you going to soften your blow a bit? No, that is not what is planned. That is not in the playbook at all. So, again, for those just tuning in, make sure to press like on this video. Help us get into the algorithm. We're probably one of the most shadow banned channels on YouTube. But anyway, John Bolton has been fired. And he claims he resigned. Again, getting back to what we were looking at here. And again, if you want to send any questions, make sure to use the super chat function. It helps keep us alive and allows us to see your comments first. Anyway, back to Twitter here. We have all of these comments coming up, but this all started when Donald Trump said this morning, about 2 hours ago, I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week. Now, something I want to check out here, I'm going to pull away from that for a second while I look this up. I want to see what the Mooch is saying, because Anthony Scaramucci has been coming out against Trump big time lately, and I want to see what his comments are on this story. I see that he has been tweeting. Let me see. Okay, here we go. And remember how close Anthony Scaramucci was to Trump at one point, and was part of the administration, though I think he's just bitter at this point, and a lot of his tweets are really stupid. But anyway, let's get to this. He says, "No one survives real Donald Trump. It's because he hates himself. If you are still in the White House, he is coming for you. Yes, it is a horror movie." And then he does at Stephen King. Trump says he fired John Bolton, but Bolton says he offered to quit, CNBC. And he shares the article. Now, Anthony Scaramucci, again, was a big part of the Trump administration. He said recently, this August, he said, "I made a mistake supporting Donald Trump. I don't need to be absolved of that, but now I will do what it takes to help make things right." But he's trying to get into some kind of wave of support from the left now, where he's just calling everything that Trump does racist. So, I mean, you can make of that what you will. But anyway, for those just tuning in, John Bolton was fired, or he resigned. There's a lot of conflicting stories about that. And nonetheless, the biggest war hawk in recent years in the administration, which is saying a lot, has resigned. Now, how many more bombs will be dropped without him? Many. I mean, let's not pretend that, this has been all absolved and that nothing is going to happen. Again, politics begets politics, collectivism begets collectivism, and puppets are replaced by puppets. I mean, this military-industrial complex conspiracy has been going on for as long as the U.S. empire has been an empire, after it was replaced as a republic by the empire, like the Roman Empire did, as we've been recently reporting on. These empires always continuously grow. They cannot stop growing. It's like a Facebook or a YouTube or whatever, Amazon. You cannot stop growing, or else you crash and burn, because they have built themselves up on this massive power complex. So of course, this isn't going to end anytime soon. It's just going to keep building until it all topples over and collapses. Remember, the U.S. government has been arming and funding these entities since the beginning. Let's remember that they shot themselves in the foot after the creation of the Federal Reserve with the sinking of the Lusitania, bringing them into World War I. In World War II, they helped prop up, before World War II, early 30s, they helped prop up Hitler against the communists. Then they propped up the USSR against Hitler. Then later, all those generations later, in the 70s, they armed and funded Al-Qaeda against the USSR. I mean, it's just a perpetual paradigm. FDR armed and funded Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam. And then what happens next? Well, obviously, we know what happened in the 1960s, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where the U.S. Attacked their own ship in order to get into war with Vietnam. They armed and funded the Ba'athist Party in Iraq against Iran. They armed and funded the Taliban, which Trump was supposed to be meeting with, and they claimed that that John Bolton came out against him. That might have something to do with his resignation or firing. Nonetheless, this system is built up with problems. You get a reaction, fear, and chaos, and then you come in with a solution, quote unquote, of more problems. It's never ending. And of course, I think a big part of this resignation or firing as well has to do with the vast amount of deficit spending that the United States has to do in order to go into all these wars. It's getting to a breaking point where it's not stable. The economy we've seen the yield curve inversion. We see the upcoming recession on the horizon. It's impossible to miss at this point. And they want to keep propping it up past the next election, saying, hey, everything's fine, the economy's great, nothing's wrong with the economy, don't worry about it, which obviously is not the case. The jobs numbers are hidden in the labor force participation rate. There's a global everything bubble. This isn't Trump's fault. This is the fault of the Federal Reserve, the vast printing, and the idea of centralizing everything to death like you are God. Anyway, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired, or as he says, resigned. Again, getting into the article here that I was going into earlier, from Politico, again, there's conflicting accounts. Trump says that he fired Bolton. Bolton says that he offered to resign, and then Trump said, we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's always just a comedy. Like, again, politics is just bread and circuses at this point. It's all nonsense, and it's all just like a big script. And this is what we've been trying to talk about for years. We've been talking about John Bolton for many years and calling him out long before he was the advisor. Over a year before he was, we predicted that that would be the case. I see there's another trending thing here alongside Bolton. There's also National Security Advisor. Let's see what Twitter says. Anyway, my friend Eric July says, hey, Donald Trump, if you were real, you'd make Ron Paul National Security Advisor. There's an idea. Again, Rand Paul recently, today said, commended Donald Trump on firing John Bolton. Los Angeles Times, breaking. President Trump unexpectedly fires John Bolton, announcing the departure of his National Security Advisor. On Twitter, most of the people in the Trump administration end up being fired. It's crazy. It's just like a nonstop, one person after another, and other people claim. Oh, I see Kyle Kashuv says National Security Advisor Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson. I have to note that we see this happen over and over again. Some people theorize that it's the whole Tressa plan thing. I think it's a psyop, but. That he's just learning things and surveying all these war hawks and these neocons, etc., and then basically throwing them out with the garbage. But I think that's a useful that's a useful assumption to benefit certain viewpoints. I don't think I buy that. Aaron Mate says Trump served up an anti-intervention rhetoric in 2016, and it helped him win. Having the living embodiment of disastrous intervention as your national security advisor was never going to help win 2020. A welcome move, but not holding my breath for someone significantly less psycho. Well said, Aaron. I would agree. I mean, you're going to replace the guy with another person who's going to be entrenched in the military-industrial complex, or else they end up with a bullet in the head. We know how this works. We've seen this for a long time, and even five-star generals have come out and noted this point many times before. As this Breitbart headline says, Senator Rand Paul is thrilled John Bolton is out as National Security Advisor. So again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired or has resigned. There's conflicting stories here. If you've just tuned in, make sure to press like. We are the most shadow banned channel, I believe, on YouTube these days. We're just getting wrecked. 80% of our viewers cut out since January. So make sure to press like, help us get into the algorithm, and use the super chat function to send your question, and we will talk about whatever your theories are, whatever your thoughts are on this story live on air. And we really invite everyone to submit their comments because this is a big story. It's breaking, and again, John Bolton is one of the biggest war hawks in recent years in the White House. Again, that's a big statement, a mighty big statement, considering how many horrible war hawks have been in office in the United States government over the past years. So I don't know. There's that conflicting story. Did he resign? Was he fired? I think that is one of the bigger distractions here, over top of what is really happening. Because I see Velvet Thunder says, do you believe Trump or Bolton? I don't make a habit of believing any politicians regardless. I mean, I don't make a habit of believing people who believe they can rule over people and enslave people and extort people to benefit their own viewpoints because they think they know what's best for everyone. Good ideas don't require force, folks. And that's a great example with someone like John Bolton. We say, oh, well, we don't want John Bolton murdering all those children. Well, of course not. He's a crazy psychopath. But then you have someone else in, and they're like, well, we'll murder less kids. And it's like, okay, is that the decision we have to make? More or less kids getting killed? More or less terrorists getting armed? More or less proxy wars? I mean, should we just not have any of that? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy. Anyway, we have a lot of comments coming in. Again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton was fired / resigned. There's a lot of conflicting evidence there. No one really knows, but I feel like that might be a distraction story right now. I think there's more evidence right now at this moment that one way or another, there's a changing of the guard, and we're leading into the next election here. So of course, we're going to have Trump try to clean up his image going into that because he lost a lot of support thanks to people like Bolton, thanks to people like Pompeo as well. And these war hawk ideas and this surveillance state, which we see with someone like Pompeo, I think we are on the verge of just a slow change of the guard leading up to the election, and then following the election again. Well, what happens with every single election? We promise free things, we promise good things are good, bad things are bad, thumb and fist, and then it's replaced by more warmongering, and oh, well, I don't have to answer to anyone if I bomb a bunch of people once I've already been elected, right? A second term, and I don't have any doubts. I think Trump will win a second term. I don't doubt that at all. Again, I don't believe in any side here. I'm someone who believes in freedom and individuals and self-defense, individual responsibility, the stuff that the country was built on in the first place. But anyway, Deem S says good riddance. I agree. Rika the Hopeful Voluntarist says meet your new boss, same as the old boss. I completely agree as well. Lee Simmons also says to cause division because they're liars. As Wham said, it's all a script. I believe so. For those just tuning in, make sure to press like on this video, share the video to get it out there. We are mostly demonetized, we are mostly censored, we are shadow banned to death. Let's get more than 126 of 133,000 people watching. We have been getting ripped apart, and those super chats, go to the top, send in those super chats. They help keep this media alive, which we work 18 hours a day to work for you and make sure that you have the information you need to make your decisions. The news that you will not hear on TV. There is an information war going on, and there's a propaganda war on for your mind. Here's our Bitcoin address for anyone who wants a tip. Taking one moment away from the report here. If anyone has Bitcoin that they want to tip, $1, $2, or $1 a month, changes everything for us here at WHAM and helps us bring you news on a regular basis and keeps us alive. We cannot do it without you folks. Anyway, for those just tuning in, again, John Bolton has been fired, or as some say, he has resigned. We want to hear your questions, folks, so send in those questions. Use that super chat function because, well, we can't really make money off of YouTube anymore because we're shadow banned almost completely. And it's deadly. So anyway, let's get to the headlines here. I think it's about time we refresh this Twitter page here of what's going on with John Bolton. I see a few new headlines coming up here. Let's see what we got. Adam Schiff says, from the beginning, I felt John Bolton lacked the judgment and temperament to be National Security Advisor. Nothing he did in the job persuaded me otherwise. The only question about his replacement is the same after all Trump resignations. Will we go from bad to worse? Now, I think that it doesn't take a genius to realize that he didn't have the temperament to control the military. I don't think anyone should be. I don't think anyone really has a temperament to be like, the gun should be pointed over there and maybe a few over there, but not over there. It's like, imagine having that power and the power that wields, and that whole quote of absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this notion of a psychopath like John Bolton, who wanted to nuke North Korea, who wanted to nuke Iran, who wanted to nuke all these countries. Didn't he say once that he wanted to nuke Cuba? I mean, this guy's a psychopath. And we know that, and we've known that all along. Why did Trump even hire him in the first place? It's all part of a script, guys. It's all part of a script, but nonetheless, John Bolton has been fired, or he was, I don't know, he resigned. There's no one, I mean, there's this conflicting story. The number one headline today isn't really that he was fired. It was more that, well, did he resign or was he fired? Did he resign or was he fired? And it's like, isn't that like apples and oranges here? I mean, this guy's a psychopath. I say good riddance to psychopaths like John Bolton. But who will he be replaced with, and who's going to decide who's going to bomb who and nuke who? Nuking Cuba is crazy. Next. And you notice when you look up people like John Bolton, here's an image that represents him well. Just explosives and militarism and destruction and murder. That's what it is, folks. It's murder. He's a bloodthirsty murderer. He has blood on his hands. He's made a lot of decisions already that ended a lot of lives. And people say, oh, well, he's a giggly old man with a fluffy mustache. No, he's a psychopath. A complete, utter psychopath. So good riddance to garbage. But again, there has been a trend with people in the Trump administration of getting in for a limited amount of time and then getting fired. And we've seen that time and time again. Like, it feels like almost every member of the Trump administration has been fired since the beginning. Now, a lot of theories can be made about that, and some of them might be true. I don't believe in the function of government, but I believe that there could be good intentions in there as well with Trump, and I totally understand Trump supporters' side on this. I just think that one way or another, you have this military-industrial complex that's murdering children left and right. Yes, children. Do you know how many children there are in countries like Iraq and in places in the Middle East? There is a huge tilt of the scale towards underage in that part of the world, that region. People have a lot of children. A lot of those children move away. You can imagine why, for many reasons, though I actually think northern Iraq is a beautiful place. I will be going there in the next year, and I'm excited to do so. But nonetheless, I mean, it's militarism. You go into these countries, you destroy these countries, and then you have this collateral damage, and they're like, well, there's going to be some collateral damage when you drop bombs, but we're targeting those terrorists. It's like the ones you armed and funded in the first place to take out the other terrorists and the other government through proxy wars. I mean, think of how ridiculous that is, and people keep just parroting it and promoting it and supporting it, and people like Julian Assange come out and put out information proving that all this murder has happened, children getting killed, journalists getting killed, by the U.S. government, as they laugh and giggle about it. And that's just one example, the helicopter attack. That's one example out of many. And yet, what do we get? Well, he's thrown in prison for spreading true information, just as like journalists are supposed to do. And the wars continue. Now, it seems like the pressure has been off a bit compared to what it was under Obama, but let's not mistake this, guys. There have been more bombs up to this point in Trump's presidency as there were in Obama's presidency at this point. Of course, Obama dropped more bombs than any other president. This isn't a contest, but let's not pretend that the military-industrial complex doesn't have a stronghold over the world and isn't continuously murdering countless people. Because the fact of the matter is that power is still extremely strong, and the U.S. has to go into massive amounts of deficit spending to pay off the war costs, which goes back to you. You guys are extorted trillions of dollars to murder people and create future problems, causing future fear and causing future chaos. It's a perpetual paradigm of destruction, folks. And we've been talking about it for years here at WHAM. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to press like on this video. For those just tuning in, John Bolton was fired / resigned. Confliction in the story there. But we have been dealing with this for a very long time, as I went into earlier. After the Federal Reserve was created, World War I kicked off, leading up through to today, the recessions, the depressions, etc., always followed by warmongering activities, vast deficit spending, massive printing of currency, and then what do we have next? We have more enslavement, more servitude, more dependency, more stupidity, more weakness. Look what they have done to humanity over the last 100 years. Look at the school system, the educational system, crashing like a rock, indoctrination camps in mass, and then you have, over top of all of that, the mainstream media getting their monopoly. People move away from the mainstream media to places like YouTube, and then what happens next? Well, the mainstream media takes over YouTube, and everyone gets muzzled and shadow banned, like us here at WHAM, completely shadow banned, as we see 133 people watching out of 133,000 subscribers. Ridiculous. Again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired, or he might have resigned. There's a lot of confliction about that story. Trump says he fired him. John Bolton disagrees. He says he'll come out with a story later on. So, of course, there's going to be controversy in the near future as John Bolton comes out, probably with a book that he's going to make millions of dollars off of. That's where all these guys get their money, other than lobbying efforts and offshore accounts. But nonetheless, he's probably going to come out like Omarosa did against Trump, or Anthony Scaramucci did against Trump, and we're gonna see book deals. It's just ridiculous. Rika, the hopeful volunteer, said 1% isn't good turnout. Rika, 133 of 133,000 people isn't 1%. It's less than 1%. My goodness. Anyway, math, Rika. Come on. I want you guys to send in your super chats. We will get to your comments and we will read them on the air. And she says 0.1%. My math sucks. Yeah, that's more like it. So send in those comments, and we will read them on air here. Super chats go to the top and help us keep ourselves alive as independent media is getting muzzled and destroyed as we lead into that next step in the military-industrial complex script. And as the banking powers lose power, they get desperate and want to muzzle people and keep people in servitude and dependency, because of course debt equals dependency for the populace. So those super chats keep us alive, so please send them in if you can. We are being shadow banned en masse. We might be one of the most shadow banned channels on YouTube. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm looking at channels talking about this today that have 15,000 viewers live, and they have 50,000 subscribers. We have 133,000 subscribers, folks. Anyway, make sure to press like if you haven't already. And Hijink says, you're still smarter than most of them, Rika. I agree. Rika's awesome. Technotard says, remove the Federal Reserve. Absolutely. Remove this system of control, this system of dependency, the system of slavery before it's too late. By the way, share this video if you haven't. Press like on this video if you haven't to get it to more people, because we can't seem to break that 145 range viewership right now. And this is big news. We need to cover this. I woke up this morning and I saw Ford Fisher of News to Share reporting on this story. And I'm like, oh man, I just woke up. I got 4 hours of sleep, but I guess this is what I'm reporting on today. So here we are, and it's good news. Yeah, Mike, again, John Bolton is out. John Bolton has been fired. But who will he be replaced by? And that is a major question coming up in the near future. Deem S sent $12 in the super chat. Thank you, Deem. I really, really appreciate it. That is what keeps this media running. It's like PBS, but not terrible. As he says, keep reporting the truth. We need you to keep up the great work. Please continue your travels to see for yourself what is really happening. Absolutely, I appreciate that. This money goes towards bringing me to places like Iraq, Iran, where I'm going to Turkey in about a week or so. So make sure to stay tuned for that. We are reporting on the scene in Turkey, multiple places across the country. And what other independent medias do that, folks? Come on. I appreciate all the other independent medias, but we need to keep Wham moving here, because I'm going into a lot of debt to report on these stories on the scene. So that $12 super chat definitely helps a lot. So I appreciate that. Deem S, you're awesome. Moving on back to the headline here for those just tuning in. John Bolton has been fired as the National Security Advisor to the President. Now, with that said, he says he resigned, but which is it? Does it matter? I don't know. Good riddance to old garbage, but as Sebastian Gorka says, of course, he's been close to the president, NSA Ambassador John Bolton may be moving on, and that's okay, but we have a great option. Secretary Pompeo, he could run the State Department and be Donald Trump's national security advisor, just like Kissinger had both jobs, and he'd be much better than Kissinger was. We do not want to see it tilt in this direction. State Department, CIA, national security advisor, and I'm starting to see some puzzle pieces fit together here. John Bolton is out. The big question is, who will he be replaced by? And Sebastian Gorka, who is one of the most respected people by Donald Trump, is now insinuating we should have a Henry Kissinger-like scenario. He could run the State Department and be Donald Trump's national security advisor. And of course, this guy was big-time CIA. He said when he was being questioned, I believe his testimony, was that 2 years ago? He said his number one issue in the United States is stopping WikiLeaks. Number one issue. Imagine reporting on war crimes, reporting on the murder of millions of people, reporting on facts. Now again, Julian Assange didn't hack anything. He's not a cyber terrorist, as Meghan McCain recently said to Pamela Anderson, which we reported on, and Pamela Anderson defended Julian Assange. He was reporting information that was already available that he was sent. It was what a journalist is supposed to do. Would anyone remember the Pentagon Papers? How do you think Watergate got out? I mean, all these things. It was leaking. And governments are organized crime, so they are, killing millions of people, spying on the masses, doing horrible things. They're a criminal racket. That's what they do. So people report on that as journalists, and then they get muzzled. Where is the freedom of speech there? Mike Pompeo was big time anti-Assange. It still is. And now he's running the State Department. He was the head of the CIA. And now they're looking at him, well, Sebastian Gorka, who is one of the most prominent people that Trump listens to, is suggesting he should also be the national security advisor to Trump. This is concerning, to say the least. Anyway, carrying on with the headlines here, Ian Bremer wrote, John Bolton has lost his job as security advisor, but he's already interviewing for other jobs. Painting in blood for art teacher. Okay, I'm going to get copyright striked if I show any more of that. Righteous Babe, nice name, with a picture of Greta Garbo, says Flynn's sentencing scheduled for December 18th. So he was, of course, a former national security advisor. We see where a lot of this goes after they resign or get fired. Man, it's a bloodbath for former administration officials under Donald Trump. At Rio Vera River says, National Security Advisor John Bolton resigns after being told to by President Trump. Hashtag scandalous Murica. Lindsey Graham says, as National Security Advisor to President Trump, I found him to be accessible and always pursuing agenda that not only helps the president, but makes America safe. Okay, Lindsey Graham, another war hawk, crazy person. Let's see what we got here. Mike Mish Shedlock says, hashtag John Bolton. Q&A, why now? Bolton's policy was known long ago. It never changed. He never should have been hired in the first place. Here's the deal. 1, Trump needs a deal to get reelected. Number 2, Bolton doesn't want deals. Code Pink, which is a prominent left-wing group, says, in celebration of today's announcement that notorious warmonger John Bolton has been fired from his position as National Security Advisor to the President, Code Pink will be hosting a celebration tonight in front of the White House. Join us at 5 p.m. All right. I do respect Code Pink to an extent. There's a lot of nonsense that they push. They are status, but they were really hard on Obama as well when it comes to spying and when it comes to warmongering, so I'll give them that. Neil says, surrounding himself with yes men to own the libs and start World War III. Okay. There's a lot of opinions going around and a lot of divide as per usual. There's a lot of nonsense. Breaking news from Truth Addict on Twitter here. Trump picks legendary Doobie Brothers guitarist Jeff Skunk Baxter, center mustache, to replace John Bolton as National Security Advisor. Of course, that's not true, but anyway. Medea Benjamin says, and she's the one from Code Pink. Don't ask why Trump fired Bolton. Ask why he hired him. Is Trump really against endless war? Then he should hire a peacemaker now as National Security Advisor, or end the military police state global complex of, the military-industrial complex itself. It's a horrible thing that has lasted for many years and has ended millions of lives and many of those children. When will we learn, folks? Replacing one puppet with another doesn't change the fact that you are still creating the same system. It's a system, not the figurehead at the helm. But again, John Bolton is more likely to nod his head and say yes to whatever the puppet master tells him to do because he's a psychopath who wanted to nuke North Korea, who wanted to nuke Cuba, who wanted to nuke Iran. I mean, I don't know. How anyone like that even gets into that office in the first place is beyond me as far as popular demand goes, but it doesn't surprise me that politicians hire psychopaths to run a criminal racket. Anyways, as many are just tuning in, I want to update everyone. Make sure to press the like. John Bolton has been fired / he has resigned. The question is being asked. No one quite knows. As per usual, there is divide over the narrative, and that never ends. Briggs wrote a sick face and says, psychos make me sick. I agree. I mean, imagine, we look down on Jeffrey Dahmer, we look down on all these other people, but we don't look down on people like John Bolton, who is supporting the murder of millions of people, about half of those, considering the populations of these countries, being children. I mean, how is that not frowned upon? But then we claim lateral violence against hate speech or anyone that offends us. People claim Julian Assange is killing people by spreading real information about people killing people and exposing people for killing people and corruption. And who's in jail? Julian Assange. Who's not in jail? John Bolton, who's probably going to get a huge book deal now and make a ton of money, probably millions of dollars, off of all of this. What does that tell us, folks? What does that tell us about the world that we live in? It tells us that we have a sick idea of what right and wrong is, good and evil, and what kind of propaganda has led to this vast, indoctrination, this mind control, this propaganda war has been started long ago, Operation Mockingbird, etc. And we've seen this warmongering go on for over 100 years, but even longer, but mostly for the last 100 years. Leading into today's warmongering activities where more bombs seem to be dropped every single year than the last, and we just get normalized to it and think, oh, well, it's collateral damage, or, oh, well, nothing to see here. Oh, that's sad news. That's negative. I don't want to see that. Well, it's time to start stepping up and calling this stuff out. This is garbage. I mean, millions of people are dying. So yes, John Bolton has been fired. John Bolton, quote unquote, resigned, whatever the story might be. But John Bolton will be replaced by another person who will probably want to kill innocent people. That's what they do. That's what the military-industrial complex does on a global scale. Will they want to kill less people than John Bolton? Well, considering John Bolton, probably. But it's still going to be a lot of people that are going to be dead. It's like picking the lesser of the evil is still evil, folks. We've been talking about this for years. For those just tuning in, make sure to press like on this video, share the video to get it to more people, to break the algorithm as we are shadow banned, and make sure to send super chats to help us stay alive. We will answer your questions live on air. Send those super chats, $1, $10, $100, it doesn't matter. You are the hero. You are the change you wish to see in the world. Anyways, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired or he has resigned. It is questionable. No one quite knows. There's a lot of confliction in the story, but I want to load up the most recent news for everyone to see on the screen here. So, as we see, I want to get to the president's tweet again. Some interesting images going out. The Onion wrote, America ends negotiations with bloodthirsty warlord. A look back at John Bolton's time in the Trump administration. David Frum, who is a warmongering neocon and himself, who I confronted once, by the way, about 6-7 years ago now, says, not in a book, not in paid speeches, not in a year or two, but to Congress and now. Speak up, John Bolton. So David Frum he's a huge neocon. He's super anti-Trump as well. Nancy Pelosi has made a statement about an hour ago, says John Bolton's sudden departure is a symbol of the disarray that has unnerved our allies since day one of the Trump administration. Steady leadership and strategic foreign policy is key to ensuring America's national security. Whatever, Nancy. Does anyone actually take Nancy Pelosi seriously anymore? I don't know. It just seems weird. Paul Joseph Watson says Bolton should have never been appointed in the first place, but kudos to Trump for draining the swamp. Okay, Paul. Now watch the left, who decried him for years during the Bush administration, pander to Bolton, hoping that he will squeal some embarrassing gossip. Now he's probably right, and that probably will happen, but the way Paul often does is he just turns it around. Oh, look at this Pepsi or Coke. Pepsi is, well, it's red or blue, right? Both are made by the same company. Both are bad for you. And some people say, well, maybe RC Cola will change things. No, RC Cola is still terrible for you and probably made with the same ingredients, slightly differing from each other. It's all nonsense. It's all a paradigm. But anyway, I appreciate a lot of what Paul Joseph Watson has done over the years. I disagree with him very wholeheartedly on a lot of this stuff because he's not consistent. George Takai says, anyway, I can't, oh man, now they're going to demonetize me even further. That is true though. I mean, we have the left, right, it's a paradigm, but of course the left is going to be like, they're, destroying the world by firing John Bolton or if he resigned or whatever, and they get on this bus, right? And then they promote warmongering. It's like, you're just looking for a reason to be against him, just like a lot of people are looking for a reason to support him. It's confirmation bias. Be consistent, folks. Come on. Jack Pospiek says short list for Bolton replacement includes Brian Hook, Rick Grinnell, Ricky Waddell, Colonel McGregor. Now, I cannot go without mentioning that Sebastian Gorka is saying that maybe Pompeo, who is head of the CIA and is head of the State Department, should also be the national security advisor, the new one, for Trump, and do what Kissinger did. Now, that is concerning if we're going in that direction. Cenk Uygur says, oh man, I don't like even reading what he has to say, but let's see what he has to say anyway. Things I love about John Bolton firing. 1, the endless anarchy from the man-child president. 2, depth to which John Bolton is going to backstab Trump now. Going to be some serious GOP on GOP crime. 3, neocons crying over how difficult it is to start an unnecessary war now. Everything Cenk says is just not good. It's just terrible. Reason Magazine says the fact that John Bolton will no longer have a direct role in setting U.S. foreign policy is a huge win for those who think the U.S. should be fighting fewer wars, writes Christian Brits. So I want to find Trump's initial tweets, which have disappeared from the top of the Twitter feed now. So let me see what I can do here. For those just tuning in, well, John Bolton has been fired, or he has been forced to resign. There's a lot of conflicting stories there, but anyway, this is what he said. Donald Trump wrote, I asked, oh, that's the second part of his tweet. Where's the first part? There we go. I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week. But with that said, well, let's actually get him up here. John Bolton on Twitter. See the latest. He said, I offered to resign last night, and here we go. And President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow. So there's stories conflicting. He messaged Brian Kilmeade on Fox News, where, of course, Bolton is a contributor, to say that what Trump is saying isn't true, and he will eventually be coming out with information. So you can imagine there's going to be some conflict happening and a big book deal like we saw with Omarosa and others. Tulsi Gabbard says, good riddance. If Trump really was for peace, he would never have hired Bolton, Pompeo, Haley, and the rest of those neocons in the first place. True words. Anyway, let's see. A lot of the most important tweets have disappeared from the main page here. But again, Secretary Mike Pompeo says there were many times Ambassador Bolton and I disagreed. That's to be sure, but that's true for lots of people with whom I interact. And of course, we see the two people, the head of the State Department, the new Hillary Clinton, Mike Pompeo, alongside Mnuchin. It makes sense. Warmongering and, of course, the finances of the masses. That is the paradigm that we are faced with, folks. For those just tuning in, again, John Bolton was just fired or has resigned. Again, more confliction. George Takaya, avid leftist socialist person that I do not enjoy at all, says Trump often called National Security Advisor Bolton Mike. Trump says, you're fired. Bolton, how am I supposed to live without you? Trump, you'll manage. Bolton, when I'm back on my feet again. Trump, you never really respected me. Bolton, I said I loved you, but you lied. He's not really entertaining anymore, is he? Man, his days have long passed. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff coming up right now. Let's see what we got here. Kurt Eichenwald says, oh my God, at Ted Cruz issues a statement on Bolton. He suggests a conspiracy theory that Bolton may have been done in by the non-existent deep state. Okay, then. Yeah, like that's non-existent. People keep claiming that the deep state is just Obama holdovers, but it's this entity of finance and war that's been going on for a very long time. It's all a scripted plan, and it benefits the military-industrial complex to keep people in servitude and in fear and in chaos, which is why they arm and fund these guys, bomb the countries, arm and fund them more, arm and fund the governments against these other ones. It's the same reason that they propped up Hitler against the Communist Party in the early 1930s, and the same reason they propped up the USSR against Hitler, and the same reason they propped up the Mujahideen, now Al-Qaeda, against the USSR. It's this perpetual paradigm. But anyway, I want to find the most important stories on John Bolton. I will get back to that in a moment once I find more. But for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired, or he has resigned. Again, we're not quite sure what is going on here because there are conflicting stories. I don't think it really matters, but Boiled Rope Lamppost says bankers fund both sides, money green. Completely agree, man. That has been the way it has been for many hundreds of years. Let's see. Johnny P writes, gave us $1 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much, man. Again, for those just tuning in, make sure to press like. Those super chats go to the top. If you want us to answer your questions, we go through a few of these questions, but there's a lot coming in. So if you want to be sure that you get your question on air, make sure to send those super chats. $1, $10, $100, it doesn't matter. You guys help keep Wham alive by sending those super chats. It makes all the difference in the world, and it keeps us alive, as we might be one of the most shadow banned channels on YouTube these days. But it's important to keep independent media alive because it's the only ones that are calling out the madness truly and fairly and squarely. Anyway, let's get to the most important tweets here. Unfortunately, so many of the best and most important tweets have been disappeared from Twitter right now. I can't find the best, most up-to-date information. I see a whole bunch of people, but I'm going to find Sebastian Gorka here. Let me just type in Gorka because I'm not going to pretend to know his spelling. There we go. Okay, so Sebastian Gorka just said something a little bit concerning. And, of course, Donald Trump loves Sebastian Gorka and has been an avid supporter of and listens to what Sebastian Gorka says. Now, Sebastian Gorka wrote a little while ago, about 49 minutes ago, NSA Ambassador John Bolton may be moving on, and that's okay, but we have a great option. Mike Pompeo. You sure about that, Gorka? He says he could run the State Department and be Donald Trump's national security advisor, just like Kissinger had both jobs, and he'd be much better than Kissinger was. So he put that in brackets because he doesn't want to get attacked too much. But, I mean, look, do we need that? Do we want that? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is just the continuation of the paradigm. This is what government does best. They just keep people in servitude and create new change we can believe in. Going back to ancient Greece, democracy always fails in that way, and collectivism begets collectivism. You cut 95% of a cancer out and you leave 5%. What happens? It grows. It always grows. And government runs on building up their powers and stacking up power on top of power until they're so big that they collapse, like we saw in ancient Rome, which I recently did a in-depth documentary style report on our channel, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Anyway, so as we see, Gorka, who's one of the most respected people by Donald Trump, says that maybe the former CIA director and head of the State Department could also be Trump's national security advisor, who also today just said that he wants to continuously be strong and be rough and be, keep the force on and keep the pressure on Iran. We know where that's going. We know that they want to destroy Iran. It's been in the books for a long time. The coup of 1953 leading up through the hostage crisis to today, the funding and arming of the Ba'athist Party in Iraq against Iran, causing one of the biggest wars or deadliest and bloodiest wars in history. I mean, it just perpetuates. And the notion of attacking Iran over and over again and creating trying to attack Iran anyway, and trying to get the demand of the public to be behind the idea of going to war. This is why we need independent medias to combat these crazy, crazy ideas of globalism and complete military power over the world. Carl Schutz says, "Hi Josh, come to Australia." I will when I can. I would love to. Thanks for tuning in. Again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired / resigns. No one really quite knows because Trump says that he asked for his resignation. John Bolton says he requested to resign, and Trump said we'll talk tomorrow. Trump wants to look in control maybe, or John Bolton wants to look in, I don't know, it's government, it's all nonsense. John Bolton is one of the biggest war hawks in American history, and that's saying a lot. I mean, considering the fact that the U.S. government has been propped up by warmongers as long as I can remember, the idea of John Bolton being the biggest warmonger says a lot about what kind of person he is. He's been advocating nuking places like Cuba, nuking places like Iran, nuking places like North Korea. It's so over-the-top crazy with his little fuzzy mustache, and people keep taking him seriously. It's ridiculous. For those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired. Make sure to send those super chats and press like and if you send the super chats, your question will go to the top and we'll answer it on air. Anyway, getting back to the most recent news here, it's really important to note that no one really took John Bolton seriously in the first place. John Bolton has been considered one of the worst, most horrific warmongers, even by the people on the right. I mean, conservatives don't like Bolton to a great extent, unless you're David Frum, a gigantic neocon who has been supporting wars and destruction for decades. Someone I confronted to his face several years ago, by the way, and he called me Alex Jones. Good times. He wrote a hit piece on me in the Daily Beast. Anyway, let's go to the most recent post here. John Bolton's resignation letter says @NatSecJeff. Says, "Dear Mr. President, I hereby resign effective immediately as Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Thank you for having afforded me this opportunity to serve our country." Okay, so there is his resignation letter according to this guy. I have not sourced this, but I don't see anything strange about it, so I can imagine that's probably the case. That's one guy who's posted that. I'm looking at the top post coming in on Twitter right now. But with that said, well, I mean, he's telling Fox News hosts that he has a different story than Trump, that he offered to resign and then Trump didn't want him to, and then Trump is saying that he fired him, essentially, asked for his resignation because he didn't agree with him. And then Fox News hosts are getting texts from John Bolton saying that they that they were told to, or they were told that he would be coming out with information in the near future regarding the reality of this, and that he disagreed with what the president was saying. So we can only imagine that there will be a book deal in the near future. You can only imagine what is going to come next. I mean, you go to Omarosa, Michael Flynn, you go to Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony Scaramucci has been really catering to the left lately on Twitter to try and revamp his image because people on the right don't like him anymore because because Trump went after him really strangely on Twitter one day about a month ago. Let's see. Financial Times makes this claim, and I think this is strange. They say, John Bolton's firing ends Donald Trump's hawkish phase. Does it? I mean, there will be a replacement. And now if you look at Sebastian Gorka pushing Secretary Mike Pompeo, he's a huge warmonger. And he claimed during testimony that his number one concern was taking down WikiLeaks and going after WikiLeaks. I mean, people just spreading information about horrible people, warmongers, murdering children. It's not the people murdering children that are bad, according to Mike Pompeo. It is the people sharing the information that these people are murdering children and killing innocent people and torturing people. I mean, or in the case of like someone like Edward Snowden, passing on information that the U.S. government, this crime racket, is spying on everyone under Obama. And of course, it's been only getting revamped and getting worse and worse over time. There's no doubt about that. In fact, the feds just ordered Scope app for guns, ordered them to hand over all data of all their users through Apple and Microsoft, I think, demanding all the information on all these people. So, yeah, I mean, the spying continues. It's worse than ever. So I think that it's really important that we understand that this isn't over. The military-industrial complex continues to pile one problem after another, and it's the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat for eternity. Again, it looks like this is the case. This is John Bolton's resignation letter. Dear Mr. President, I hereby resign, effective immediately, as Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Thank you for having afforded me this opportunity to serve our country. And let's go back to the original statement by Donald Trump on Twitter that caused flurry of news to come out this morning. I was just waking up and then boom, this is in my face, and it's like, oh man, now I gotta get to work. As he says, I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week. And if he listens to Sebastian Gorka, he might put Mike Pompeo in the job, as well as being former head of the CIA and the head of the State Department. David Axelrod says, that said, Bolton was an odd choice to start with, out of sync with Donald Trump on many issues. Performing on Fox shouldn't be the principal qualification for high government positions. Yeah, well, I mean, the military-industrial complex wants murderous, crazy psychopaths to head the military-industrial complex. It goes without saying. Anyway, getting out of Trump's Twitter here, of course, John Bolton said that he offered to resign. Trump says, nope, I fired him. There's more of this nonsense that never ends. It really never ends. BBC Newslight, Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton is out. Politico story, Trump and Bolton offer conflicting accounts on his White House exit. I'm going to go over this again. The president says he asked for Bolton to leave. Bolton says he offered to resign on his own. President Donald Trump has ousted National Security Advisor John Bolton, asserting in a pair of surprise tweets Tuesday that he and the controversial aide disagreed strongly on matters of foreign policy. I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House, Trump wrote. And I quote, and if you didn't hear me before, I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. The president continued, adding that he will name a new national security advisor sometime next week. But Bolton, who was scheduled to appear at a White House briefing later Tuesday afternoon alongside Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, interesting bunch, isn't that, offered a conflicting account on Twitter minutes after the Trump's posts. I think they wrote this article too hastily. They need to update it and edit it. Anyway, and I quote, I offered to resign last night and President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow, he wrote online. Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley confirmed that Charles Kupperman, the Deputy National Security Advisor, would replace Bolton on an acting basis, and went on to defend Trump's version events to reporters outside the White House. And I quote, the fact is, the President of the United States asked John Bolton last night for his resignation. It was delivered today. He said John Bolton's priorities and policies don't line up with the president's. And of course, he was probably the biggest warmonger in recent ages in the U.S. government, which is saying a lot. As we see these articles come out, try to get the latest here. 36 minutes ago, Trump fires John Bolton as National Security Advisor, NBC News. 6 minutes ago, Mike Pompeo, I disagreed with John Bolton many times. Now, of course, Trump is pushing, or Gorka is pushing for Mike Pompeo to be named the new National Security Advisor at the same time, like Kissinger, as being the head of the State Department. Now, that gets into very dangerous territory. John Bolton was bad. His departure might be worse, says the Washington Post, because they want to find ways to benefit their viewpoint one way or another and switch every little story into a mold to fit their confirmation bias and their viewership, which is very narrow these days and falling by the day. Again, this is why independent medias are needed, so make sure to press a like on this video. Send super chats to get your questions to the top, and we will answer them on air. So send those super chats, guys. It keeps Wham alive. Anyway, continuing on, Los Angeles Times, opinion, John Bolton got the boot. So much for Trump's team of rivals. So there's going to be this push to make Trump look bad in this case. And look, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a supporter of government in general. I think they're all crazy to think that they should be able to rule over the populace. Collectivist paradigm continues. and it begets more collectivism. It's always a race to build the Tower of Babel to the top until it gets toppled over because you think you're playing God and you think you have all the power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, of course. Slate Magazine says, good riddance, John Bolton. The Atlantic says John Bolton will hold this grudge. Now, there's no doubt about it in my mind that we will see a book deal. We will see a further push for, maybe a speaking tour with John Bolton. He is going to go after Trump. I think that's quite clear. Very few haven't gone after Trump after leaving the administration. We know what happened with Anthony Scaramucci lately, which he's been totally catering to the left for the most part and pushing the whole racism and bigot nonsense on Twitter 24/7. It's ridiculous. It's sad to watch because I know he's virtue signaling. I know he's lost his right-wing support, so he's going for the left wing. It's sad to watch. But anyway, there's a lot of fake people out there. I think there's no doubt there will be a book deal on the horizon. We also saw what happened with Omarosa as well, and it didn't actually turn out very well for her. Most of the people who come after Trump who are in his administration aren't very successful in it, to be honest. Matthew A says, Pappy Bolton sacked? Absolutely, he has been, and good riddance to garbage. Non-Mirage Truth Vision sent $2 in the super chat. Thank you. Those super chats keep us alive here on YouTube as they shadow ban the F out of us. And he says, or she, I don't know, says, who will be his replacement? Nikki Haley? Oh, man. Yeah, well, that's the thing. They've been talking, there's been talk about possibly Mike Pompeo. There's a lot of people putting their ideas out there. I predicted John Bolton to be a national security advisor to Trump a year before he was. You could go back in Wham videos. We've been talking about him for years here at Wham, and the fact that he was hired in the first place says a lot. But with that said, yes, it's good to see him fired, but who will he be replaced by? For those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired / he has resigned. However you want to look at it, because Trump says he fired him or asked for his resignation. And John Bolton says he asked to resign, and Trump kind of said, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So there's confliction there, and as per usual, debate. And John Bolton is talking to Fox News host currently and texting people in the media saying, because of course he was a Fox News contributor for a while, saying that he will come out with a story in the near future. That just wait, be patient. My story is gonna come out. So that should be concerning to Trump, but at the same time, I think it's just him trying to grasp at straws in order to make money off of a book deal, and why not? Of course, it's better that he makes a bunch of money off of selling terrible books that he probably had ghostwritten than murdering kids. But with that said, who will he be replaced by? And again, this idea of doing a Kissinger-like scenario like under Nixon where possibly Mike Pompeo, the former head of the CIA, might be head of the State Department and be the national security advisor to Trump. I don't know. That sounds like something that could very well happen in this day and age, but I do know that Trump is trying to clean up his image going into the next election because he ran on a very non-interventionist message, as did, for example, Obama, as did Bush, surprisingly. People forget, as did Clinton, but we know what happened there. Non-interventionism, not so much. Bush obviously was a huge warmonger, so was Clinton, and then Obama beat the record and dropped more bombs than any president in history. And then Trump ran on the non-interventionist policy because most people don't support war. So you have to run on there. What does that tell you? People are sick of this stuff, and I think independent medias have helped in a lot of ways, not just myself, but many of them have helped in a lot of ways, helping getting that message out and waking people up to the craziness of this military-industrial complex worldwide, which is exactly one of the main reasons why the independent medias have been cracked down on so hard and been muzzled so insanely over the last year especially. We have lost 80% of our viewership on YouTube since February. It's just like a bloodbath. So make sure to press the like on this video, help get around the algorithm. But anyway, and send in your super chats. They keep us alive, and get your questions to the top and we'll answer your questions. But I think that he's trying to clean up his image, and I think that going into the next election, there's a good chance that it'll be like, yeah, well, I fired John Bolton because he was too much of a warmonger or war hawk. But then after the next election, hire a new war hawk. I don't know. Trump has, and I'm going by statistics. You don't have to like what I'm saying, guys. But Trump has dropped more bombs at this point in his presidency than Obama had at this point in his presidency, though overall, obviously, Obama dropped a lot more bombs. But at this point in his presidency, Trump has dropped more bombs than Obama had. That's just a fact. That is just a fact, and we cannot get around it to look for confirmation bias. We need to be consistent and call out this craziness of dropping bombs on children. And John Bolton is one of the biggest warmongers in U.S. history, which again is saying a lot. He has been fired / resigned. We don't know. Besides the point, who will be replacing John Bolton? John Bolton is the same guy who has been talking about bombing or nuking North Korea, nuking Iran, nuking Cuba. But of course, Mike Pompeo just said today, alongside Steven Mnuchin, of course, State Department and Finances, fits together like a sandwich these days, especially. John Bolton said earlier today in a press conference that he disagreed with John Bolton on many things, but also that when asked if this will mean that they'll lower the pressure on places like Iran, Mike Pompeo said, no, that will not happen. We will continue to increase pressure on Iran. This is concerning to say the least, because Iran they've gone after Iran back to the 1950s, through the 60s, 70s, arming and funding the Ba'athist Party against Iran, causing one of the bloodiest wars in history. And of course, this push to these coups, these attempts to spread fear about Iran, like Iran is actually going to bomb the United States. It's ridiculous. But John Bolton's like, yeah, we'll just get rid of it. Let's just drop a nuke. Let's just drop a nuke on this whole country and kill millions of people. It's just the type of people we're dealing with. Rika the Hopeful Voluntarist says in the live chat, it's a shame Joyce left the chat. It's fun watching Josh trigger Trumpsters. Well, that's the thing. I tend to trigger both sides because people so often cannot imagine not supporting either side of the Pepsi or Coke scenario. There are puppet masters at play here, and government, it's immoral and it's illogical. It's a collectivist paradigm. It's 51% versus the 49%. It's an idea that good ideas require force. That taxation needs to be, like money, needs to be stolen from people in order to put into these massive paradigms of war and destruction. It's a horrible, horrible ideology that has been pushed onto people over the centuries, and people have just been indoctrinated into, because you spend most of your childhood in a public school indoctrination camp, government indoctrination camp, so you look at government as mom and dad, so you get out of school and you end up subservient to the state, dependent on the state, and looking at them like your parent, like they have to be, like there is no other choice, like you cannot have a voluntary governance structure of any kind. Anyway, it's just the biggest paradigm, biggest scam ever bestowed onto the populace. I am just being consistent. You don't have to like it, but listening to people that you don't agree with is also very important. We have a super chat coming in from Carl Schutz that says, I appreciate all of your work. Thanks, mate. Australian $10. Thank you so much. We need to get back to reporting on Australia more here at WHAM. There's a lot of stuff happening there. Thank you so much. Again, those super chats help keep WHAM alive. Without them, we cannot survive. We are at bare minimum here after getting cut down about 80% since January and February by YouTube shadow banning. It is ridiculous. Today, the video we posted this morning got the least views in the first hour of any video we posted in 5 years here at WHAM. So we need your help more than ever. Make sure to share this video, press a like on it. For those just tuning in, we're not going anywhere yet, so stay tuned. We got to get back into the most recent news, breaking as we speak, regarding the firing / resignation of John Bolton, of course, National Security Ambassador. Look, we are dealing with one of the biggest war hawks in history in the U.S., and this guy is a complete psychopath. We will get further into that news in a moment, but first, make sure to press like, share this video, get us into the algorithm, help us with the algorithm, share it with your friends, share on Facebook, Twitter, elsewhere, hashtag John Bolton, hashtag National Security Advisor, etc. Let's get us out there, because YouTube won't show people for the most part. If you see this video, you've managed to successfully get around the algorithm that only pushes mainstream media nonsense, which, speaking of mainstream media, John Bolton has been texting people in the mainstream media, including at Fox News, where he was a contributor for quite some time, leading to his role in the White House. And he has been telling people that he's going to be coming out with his story real soon. So I think a lot of us can assume that we're going to be looking very shortly at a book deal of some kind in order to get as much money and wring as much money out of this as possible, because that's where so much of that money comes from. And they make a fortune at it. Look at Obama. Michelle Obama is all over Canada right now trying to make as much money as possible off of speeches, because for some reason people in Canada still buy her nonsense. But anyway, it's really important that we look at the context of this story, because yes, John Bolton, good riddance to him. He is booted out of the White House. Awesome. Or as he says, he decided to resign on his own. Whatever might be the case, nonetheless, he's a warmongering psychopath war hawk. But with that said, who will replace John Bolton? That is the ultimate question here today as we report live on this breaking news. Let's look at the most recent here. Mirko Plastic says John Bolton will be spending more time with family and friends. Oh, okay. Anyway, this person says, Aki Perit says, disappointed with the lack of Game of Thrones references. Read The Fall of the House of Bolton on Twitter today. Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. There's a parody tweet here. I asked John for his resignation. He wants to have U.S. military all over the world, but I want them to stay only in my hotels. Sad. All right. But we could at least celebrate the fact that we aren't going to see further John Bolton policy. But what other policy are we going to see? These guys are all puppets. And, of course, Code Pink, which I'm not a big fan of, but at least they've been consistent on war anyway, is having a party in front of the White House tonight to celebrate John Bolton's exit. Now, oh, great. Here we go. Here's some more warmongering articles. And I'm going to bring up some of this. Let's see what this article says here. John Bolton's exit isn't a victory for our adversaries. And as the article goes into, President Trump's announcement today that he has fired National Security Advisor John Bolton does not necessarily mean a win for American adversaries, Iran and North Korea, both of which have been targets of Bolton. In the case of Iran, the hawks in the Trump administration still carry some degree of influence. Although it's accurate to say that Bolton was the most hawkish against Iran, there might be a degree of relief for the Iranian regime, but not full relief. Israel still has Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Trump administration is on very good terms with Israel. Well, there we go with that. Netanyahu in particular, as well as Saudi Arabia, both of which want Iran's aggressive governing regime to be weakened, if not destroyed. So there's another example of it's not the ideology, it's the idea of government. That's the biggest religion of all. You have Saudi Arabia, you have Israel, very different ideologies, but both very, very much the ideology of government and restriction and destruction of free will and murder of innocent people. That's what they're best at, right? And as this article continues from The Hill, the pressure on Iran remains formidable, especially when it comes to economic sanctions. In response, Iran's regime seems to be gradually rolling back on its commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. The consensus is that the United States withdrew from the agreement first, conveying bad faith, especially in the eyes of the Iranians. And there is an ad in my way here, so I cannot read this other part here. Can you get out of here? Okay, I got to reload the article here. Anyway, as it continues, while Bolton's departure from the administration is a bit of a release for Iran, as with a pressure cooker, the entire lid has not been removed. The Trump administration has indicated a determined way forward to continue the economic, political, and security pressures on Iran. At the same time, President Trump has gestured at a willingness to talk at the negotiation table. Iran, however, has flatly rejected these gestures. The Obama administration called its policy and strategy relative to Iran bigger carrots, bigger sticks. And it appears that the Trump administration has embraced similar courses of action, but with greater emphasis on the bigger sticks as threats. Its agenda has been to get Iran at the table to renegotiate the JCPOA in terms that are more favorable to the Trump agenda. As it continues, no one wants war. Not Iran, not the United States, not Israel, not Saudi Arabia. You sure about that? It is not in anyone's interest, and it would risk escalating to an all-out catastrophe in the Middle East. But whatever damage that the United States and Israel can do to Iran's regional agendas, as in the case of Israeli airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Syria and Lebanon, would be acceptable. Oh my goodness, it's never ending. Don't you see what's happening here, folks? It will not end at this. This will continue. This will not stop here. They will replace John Bolton with a new puppet. That is what the military-industrial complex does. That's what they have been doing all the time. People going, Henry Kissinger's out, and then who do they replace Henry Kissinger with? Well, let's see. The military-industrial complex has only gotten bigger from there on, but people keep looking at government and the military-industrial complex and the same paradigm to change themselves, to fix the problems of themselves, the problems that they created in the first place. It is ridiculous. We will see John Bolton replaced, and we will see further wars. We will see further bombs drop. There is a certain change of the guard happening for sure. We're definitely seeing that, and some people theorize that Donald Trump is actually just hiring a lot of crazy warmongers and sociopaths and psychopaths in order to closely monitor the deep state, but then fire them afterwards after he has enough information. But I think that might be a very big assumption to make. To benefit viewpoints. Again, one way or another, people want whatever benefits their viewpoint in the status realm of government and collectivism, and we need to break free from that. Anyway, for those just tuning in, make sure to press like on this video, share it on Facebook, Twitter, elsewhere, use the hashtags. Let's get people watching, and those super chats go to the top and help keep us alive, and we will answer your questions live on air. What I am currently going to do right now is I am going to let people know on Facebook to tune in and elsewhere, so don't mind me. Again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired or he has resigned. We're not quite sure because there's conflicting stories there. John Bolton fired. Join me on YouTube live for the latest news. Post that on Facebook. Anyway, it's so hard to talk and report the news live while typing things on other websites. Anyway, let's get back to the chat. If anyone has any questions, please send them in. I'm going to try to get to them, but also, it's best if you send those super chats. It helps us stay alive as a media, as we are probably one of the most shadow banned independent medias out there. And we have 124 people watching out of 133,000 on breaking news. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at channels that have 50,000 subscribers, rather, and they have like 5,000 to 10,000 people watching their live stream on this very same thing. It's crazy how bad we're shadow banned. So make sure to press like, share this video, etc. But for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired / he has resigned. There's different stories here. We do not know one way or another, and it doesn't matter. What matters is what he'll be replaced by. Now, of course, it matters that he's out. That's very important to mention because, of course, he is one of the biggest warmongers, biggest war hawks in recent history, and that's saying a lot about the U.S. military-industrial complex. So I'm going to go back to the original tweets that started this news firestorm today, and I'm going to also load up the most recent tweets just to see if Trump is saying anything since, though I'm sure his other advisors are telling him not to at the moment. But let's bring his tweets up here. Okay, as it says, I informed John Bolton last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagreed strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new national security advisor next week. And with that said, John Bolton, let's go to his Twitter, had a bit of a different story. He wrote, I offered to resign last night and President Trump said, let's talk about it tomorrow. So obviously different ideas there. Secretary Pompeo has made a few statements, and he's really pushing on Iran right now, and he said that the pressure won't be given up on that. Sebastian Gorka, let's get Gorka up here again for those that haven't seen. This is kind of unnerving, to say the least. We feel a sigh of relief to see Bolton out, but that's not the end of this story here. And he's live on air right now trying to get people to give him ideas. Anyway, he wrote on Twitter about an hour ago, NSA Ambassador John Bolton National Security Advisor, anyway, John Bolton may be moving on, and that's okay, but we have a great option, Mike Pompeo. That's not a great option at all, Gorka. He says he could run the State Department and be Donald Trump's national security advisor, just like Kissinger had both jobs, and he'd be much better than Kissinger was. Well, it wouldn't be hard to be better than Kissinger was, but in this age of the military-industrial complex, you might end up dropping a few more bombs than Kissinger ordered. I think this is concerning, to say the least. Really, really concerning. One thing I want to actually check is the markets and how markets are reacting to this, if at all. We're at the 30-year gold price. Let's bring that down to the one-day gold price and see if anything has reacted. Let's see. It's going down over the last day. Let's look at the 3-day chart. Doesn't really tell us much. Okay, let's go to crypto and see how crypto is affected by this. When people are concerned about war, the crypto markets go up. When people are less concerned, it goes down. It seems to have that reaction. So Bitcoin's down 2.56% today. All right, good to note that anyway in context with this story. But again, they are pushing for more war and more destruction and the usual nonsense. And John Bolton is telling people at Fox News that he will be coming out with his full story very soon. And it's concerning to say the least that he will be replaced, but nonetheless, it's good to see him out. But he's probably going to get a book deal, and Trump's trying to polish his image going into the next election because he got a lot of support from non-interventionists, but then ended up dropping a lot of bombs, which concerned a lot of people. But statism isn't the cure for statism, folks, and it never has been, so we shouldn't be too surprised about any of that. Anyway, going back to my beautiful face here. Make sure to press like on this video if you haven't already, and please send those super chats. It keeps us alive. We are in life and death situation right now, and as we're getting shadow banned to death, and it takes you guys keeping independent media alive so we can talk about these stories and have a clear conversation with independent individuals that actually have diverse ideas rather than the mainstream media forcing ideas down our throat about what we should think and what person should replace it. This person, replace cancer with cancer, pour kerosene on fire as per usual. How he will be replaced is very important, and they will replace him. And they're talking about possibly Mike Pompeo, who is a huge warmonger and would love to bring Iran to heel and wants to push war with Iran. So it's absolutely crazy. Banana 2014 Twitter says thumbs up. Josh, thank you very much. Thumbs up to you as well. Make sure to press like on this video, share this video so more people watch. We have 114 people watching on this breaking news out of 133,000 people on our channel. So make sure to share and like and help us get more viewers. Rika the Hopeful Voluntarist says, you mean you can't cure cancer with cancer? I know, it's crazy, right? Who would have thought? For those just tuning in, John Bolton has just been fired. Though Trump says he asked for his resignation, John Bolton said that he asked to resign last night, and Trump said we'll talk tomorrow about it. So there's confliction, and then John Bolton saying he'll come out with the whole story to Fox News hosts. And then also on top of that, John Bolton is probably going to come out with a book deal after all this is done, said and done. That's the way it usually goes with these psychopaths in power. They are no longer on welfare, so they go out and get big book deals and make a ton of money. So that's It's unfortunately the fact of the matter here. Let's get to the most recent news on all of this. I'm going to refresh the news feed, and let's see. Let's actually set these settings properly. Search settings, and okay, what is going on here? They totally changed the Google search settings. Current region or Afghanistan or Andorra? No, I just want the most recent search results. Anyway, okay, that didn't work out very well. Oh, tools, right? Sort by relevance, sort by date, recent, past hour. Let's look at that. Okay, so Trump dismisses John Bolton, says they disagreed strongly, and that's a headline out of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. USA Today, why the Trump-Bolton breakup was inevitable. They clashed over Iran, North Korea, and more. Well, let's not forget that John Bolton wanted to nuke North Korea. So there's that. And imagine how many millions of people would have died if that were the case. If that's the case, they'd have no reason to hold up their empire in North Korea, and they would just fire rockets into South Korea, and it would just be a flurry of destruction and death. Toledo Blade says Trump fires National Security Advisor John Bolton. Bolton notes, says a National Review. And then the Irish Times, of all publishers, says, how will John Bolton's dismissal affect U.S. foreign policy? Well, I think it will affect it temporarily a little bit and make people on the more libertarian-leaning conservative side that supported Trump before and no longer support him more going into the next election. But how will that affect us overall over the long term? Well, he'll be replaced by another warmonger, because that's what they do. That's how the military-industrial complex works. John Bolton's departure is good for diplomacy, bad for stability, says Quartz. Okay, like I feel like a lot of these mainstream medias are grasping at straws in any way possible, like this Washington Post article. John Bolton was bad. His departure might be worse. Ridiculous, right? They look for ways to confirm their own bias. That is the way the mainstream media works, and promote the indoctrination of the masses like the public school system, right? Again, Sebastian Gorka is pushing for Mike Pompeo to be the State Department, head of the State Department and National Security Advisor to Trump, which is crazy. He was also the head of the CIA. So we can only imagine where that goes. And Pompeo said today this will not mean that there will be any less pressure on Iran. Tulsi Gabbard says, good riddance. If Trump really was for peace, he would never have hired Bolton, Pompeo, Haley, and the rest of those neocons in the first place. Adam Schiff says, from the beginning, I felt John Bolton's lacked the judgment and temperament to be National Security Advisor. Nothing he did in the job persuaded me otherwise. The only question about his replacement is the same after all Trump resignations. Will we go from bad to worse? Now, notice how this all is always just a soap opera. It's all just this guy or that guy. I support this guy. I support that guy. They should be voted off the island, blah, blah, blah. And it's so ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, Bill Mitchell says, I don't get the hubbub over Bolton. Trump said he asked Bolton for his resignation. Bolton is saying he resigned. Honestly, who cares about the semantics? Trump was unhappy with the job Bolton was doing, and Bolton resigned. Done. Next. I agree. That is the way we should be looking at it, but at the same time, we shouldn't be looking at who replaces this psychopath next. Which psycho replaces a psycho? Out with the old boss, in with the new boss. Same as the old boss, right? Jack Pospiak says, Mitt Romney very unhappy with John Bolton's firing. Wants him back. Please come back. Well, I don't think anyone really cares about what Mitt Romney says. So next. CC or Chat by CC says, sure would be cool if President Trump replaced John Bolton with General Flynn. Yeah. Anyway. George Takei says, oh, FFS, because, you know, the far left as well, just like to find any reason to be against Trump. And again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but like they look for any reason to attack Trump. It's so ridiculous. They'll go to the extent of, yeah, I support nuking all these countries in the Middle East, even as a leftist, because I don't like Trump. You know, that's the way they see things. It's so ridiculous. And actually, with that said, you know who I would love to see his comments on this story, considering it would be great comedy? That would be Rob Reiner, who says the most ridiculous nonsense on Twitter about Trump. John, I mustache you for your resignation, says RT. Hilarious. Okay, who was I just talking about there? Rob Reiner. His posts on Twitter are the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. Rob Rauner says, not that we need any more evidence, but this administration and this president is effed up. Scandal, corruption, lies, blah, blah, blah. So he hasn't written much about Bolton. I just like him for comedy. Let's see what this comedian says. AOC has written nothing that I see so far about the resignation. No, she hasn't written anything yet. Okay, so there's that. Back to the most recent tweets. Let's write latest here on Twitter. Aaron 2 Van Kood says on Twitter, I'm never surprised. Pompeo gets laughs in press briefing after question about Bolton's exit. Is that like a robot laughing, or is that not a robot laughing? Look at that. What? Oh, anyway, and that guy's the worst, that guy in the press pool. He's always just terrible. A week is a lifetime in politics. Wonder if Juan Guaido will still return John Bolton's phone calls since Trump fired Bolton. Okay, apparently the latest tweets wasn't a good idea. Let's just look at the top tweets. By this point, I must once again push everyone to press like on this video and share the video to get more viewers in, because we need it more than ever, because the algorithm is against us here on YouTube. So press like, share the video, and send in those super chats, and we will answer your question live on air. Yik Yak says Bolton is crazy. He absolutely is. He's a complete psychopath, so good riddance. But again, for those just tuning in, John Bolton was fired / resigned. We don't know. It's all semantics, as Ed Mitchell wrote. It's true. It's just nonstop semantics and soap operas and reality shows here as far as politics goes. And that's what it's meant to be. It's a bread and circuses, right? But John Bolton has been fired, and he claims that he wanted to resign, and Trump said, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then Trump says, I asked for his resignation. All this semantic nonsense as per usual. So there you have that. But anyway, Twitter moments. President Trump announced that John Bolton is out as national security advisor, but Bolton quickly shared his own story contradicting the president. Oh, here we go. Drama, drama, drama. It's like high school. It never ends, but it's just more dangerous and kills more people when it's politics. Anyway, Elizabeth Warren says John Bolton has never met a war he didn't like. He never should have been national security advisor in the first place. Jennifer Rubin says if Bolton wants to save his reputation, he can render one final service. Collect all the former national security officials and tell the American people just how unfit this president is. It's time for careerism to end and the patriotism to start. The left has this weird way of turning it into whatever benefits their viewpoint. Bolton was awful, but I'm not sure how I feel about this new national security advisor, says Nick Jack Pappas. Hilarious. Oh, the Russia nonsense is still going. It's talking about warmongering crazy people. First of all, the left seems to be on Bolton's side in a lot of cases in this recent firing, which says a lot about how inconsistent they are as a generalized group anyway. But also the idea of, like, they're also pushing this warmongering against Russia. They want they want war with Russia? I mean, I don't know. It's been a thorn in my side for years dealing with this. Scott Dworkin says John Bolton needs to be forced to testify in front of Congress immediately. The American people deserve to know everything. Well, he'll come out with his book deal instead and make lots of money. There's more profit in that. Jennifer Rubin, which is worse, Trump with Bolton or Trump without? Yes. Okay. NBC News says, as President Trump began losing confidence in John Bolton, who was fired today, he reached out to the man he had fired to give Bolton the job, H.R. McMaster. Okay, so this is kind of recent news. In phone call to McMaster, Trump told his second national security advisor that he misses him. Okay, according to what source? Let us see what this story is all about, because H.R. McMaster was a big warmonger as well, but he also made some statements that were interesting regarding a possible false flag in Syria, if I can remember correctly, and no evidence of Assad gassing his own people, which I think most of us saw was obvious, and that's why independent medias are so important, because people saw right through that story immediately, and now we're not at war with Syria, even with John Bolton as a national security advisor. But anyway, he's out now, and this article from the terrible NBC News says, as frustration with Bolton mounted, Trump reached out to ex-advisor McMaster. In phone call to McMaster, Trump told his second national security advisor that he missed him. Washington. As President Trump began losing confidence in National Security Advisor John Bolton, whom he fired on Tuesday, he reached out to the man he had fired to give Bolton the job, retired Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. In phone calls to McMaster, the first of which took place last fall, Trump told his second national security advisor that he missed him, according to two people familiar with the conversation. It's a sentiment the president has also expressed to White House aides, they said. Trump has solicited McMaster's advice on various national security challenges, even asking McMaster who he should nominate to lead the Pentagon, they said. Okay, so this is where a lot of the fake news comes from, the saying fake news in a lot of ways, is because you see stories like this out of NBC and they're getting ad revenue and they're pushing stories, but they have no source, according to some people familiar with the matter. What does that mean, NBC? You are just saying something. You're writing a story. You're writing possibly fiction, and we don't know because some anonymous source that are familiar with the matter and some aides and stuff, but we can't tell you which aides and, whatever. And I realize, mainstream medias get texts and, private messages from certain aides and stuff, but it's like every single story looks like it. It's ridiculous. Trump's contacts allegedly with McMaster perhaps presaged his decision Tuesday to unceremoniously fire Bolton. They also were a remarkable shift for the president that is emblematic of how much Bolton fell out of favor since Trump welcomed him into the White House 17 months ago. Man, it's been that long already? A lot of people died. At that time, Trump was barely speaking to McMaster and regularly did derogatory impressions of him in his absence, according to current and former White House officials. Like Bolton, McMaster's firing was also hasty and unannounced and announced publicly by the president on Twitter. Bolton later said he had resigned and was not fired. Trump's patience for Bolton ultimately wore thin. Aides say Trump was close to firing Bolton earlier this year, even putting his name on a list of officials he'd like to get rid of before the end of the year, after which such moves might have a negative effect on his re-election campaign, officials said. The president was angered by what he viewed as Bolton's positioning himself in the news media as a decision maker on key issues like Iran and Venezuela, the official said, and it didn't help that Trump thought these policies weren't working. So wait, that's a double-edged kind of comment there. So wait, Trump was making all these decisions, but he didn't like the decisions. That's another reason why people are so confused about the policy making there. And with Venezuela, what a horrible disaster that is. I mean, Venezuela destroyed their own country, but sanctions didn't help either. And the idea of going in with military obviously makes it even worse. Bayana 2014 Twitter, send us a super chat on YouTube. Thank you again. Those keep us alive. Send $2. Thank you. Any super chat makes a huge difference in our ability to report these stories live to you and report stories on a daily basis, 1 to 5 videos a day, and go to sites around the world and report from what some might call dangerous places. I'm going to Iraq soon. We could really use help as we're getting shadow banned to death here on YouTube. It's never been more important for you guys to be able to drag some of this weight and help us step up and bring these stories to the masses, because these stories help us and help the masses, independent media in general, bring these stories to the public and making people think outside of the mainstream media paradigm and the public school paradigm, make people think in a different, more independent, more comprehensive way, which helps us, reject wars and reject further higher taxes and more spending and all these kinds of things. It helps us one way or another, even if just minimally. It's important because I know that in the end, YouTube will take down this channel. We will be gone. We will be done. And what will happen then? Well, no one will know anymore what to do. We'll be gone. So check the links below as well for ways you can help us. There's many ways. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, where we post subscriber-only content and free and videos to people that are $5 or more a month. But you can pledge less. $1 single a month from everyone that subscribes would be $133,000 a month, and we would destroy mainstream media. Though I know that wouldn't happen, but even 10%, that's $13,000. So again, any help is really appreciated and keeps us alive and helps us report these stories. Anyway, There's also float.app, flote.app. I'll write it in the live chat. That's a new social media that's replacing Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, replacing Tumblr, replacing Reddit, and at the same time replacing Patreon, and allows crypto pledges and everything like that. And I would be remiss to not mention here, of course, this is our Bitcoin address. If you want to tip us in Bitcoin, it helps a lot. Again, we need you more than ever. You guys are what keeps independent media alive. Without you, we will perish. We will perish. Probably within the next year, this channel will not be on YouTube anymore. And it's very crucial that we reach out to you guys and do this and let you know that we need you guys more than ever. Anyway, I'm going to get back to this story here. As I have been reporting, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired. Or he resigned. Conflicting stories. Which one is it? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. What matters is he's out. And what also matters is who he will be replaced by. And we also see examples like from Sebastian Gorka, who Trump very much trusts on ideas and takes a lot of what he says very seriously. Gorka is talking about pushing Mike Pompeo as the next national security advisor to replace John Bolton. And of course, he was the head of the CIA. He's currently the Secretary of State. And Gorka says he should be both Secretary of State and the new national security advisor. But let's think about that for a second. What would that mean? What would that entail? Well, let's see. He just did a press conference today with Stephen Mnuchin, which actually Bolton was supposed to be involved in, and said that he believes that he will continuously push the pressure even more so and get even stronger on Iran. Of course, this is the same guy who said in his testimony that his number one concern is WikiLeaks, Mike Pompeo. So the idea of him replacing is not good news at all. But of course, Trump is trying to polish up his image going into the next election and doesn't need a crazy psychotic warmonger who wants to nuke Cuba, North Korea, and Iran like John Bolton. But the story goes on, the paradigm continues, and it'll never end as long as we have that paradigm. You replace the head, you replace the people that represent, quote unquote, this massive complex of destruction and murder of millions of people worldwide for all these years. And you can't expect it to change by just changing the person. It'll continue. You got to get rid of that system in itself, or else you'll just perpetuate cancer forever. Cancer begets cancer. You don't cut 95% out, leave 5%, and expect it not to grow. Lesser of two evils is still evil. Good ideas do not require force. Government is organized crime. Taxation is theft. And this militarism is murder. Nothing short of murder. We've seen it murder millions of people over the last decade. Millions. And when will people speak up? You see people frown upon people like Jeffrey Dahmer, but when people like John Bolton comes in, he's a laughingstock, of course, but he's a murderer. He's pushed for way more murders than Jeffrey Dahmer ever pushed for. I mean, this is a guy who has signed off on thousands of murders. That's what they are, because most of the deaths are collateral. Most of them. And the ones that aren't collateral are people who are armed and funded by the U.S. government in the first place. This is the issue we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a vast conspiracy by the military-industrial complex to push chaos or order out of chaos by spreading fear and creating new enemies, which they've done forever during the sinking of the Lusitania leading into World War I, early 1930s, helping prop up Hitler against the Communist Party, and then helping prop up the USSR later on against Hitler, and then helping prop up the Mujahideen, later Al-Qaeda, against the USSR. Do you see the pattern here? Help prop up Ho Chi Minh under FDR and then go after Vietnam after attacking your own ship in the Gulf Tonkin incident in the 1960s. Arming and funding the Ba'athist Party against Iran, causing one of the biggest, bloodiest wars in history, on top of, obviously, the military coup in Iran. Also, on top of that, what we see with, for example, the arming and funding of the Taliban, the arming and funding of ISIS, it continues. It'll always continue as long as we continue just replacing the head of this snake. You have to cut it off and don't replace it. It's got to be gone. Wipe your hands clean. Good. John Bolton is out. Good riddance to garbage. Good riddance to a psychopath. But of course, he's going to make a lot of money. He's going to benefit off this hugely because he's going to come out with a book deal, and then he's going to say bad things about Trump, and then he's going to make a bunch of money, and he's going to go do the news rounds. He's going to get a big job on one of the big news networks like he had before anyway on Fox News, which led to him being hired. Why he got hired in the first place is beyond me, but it makes sense because the military-industrial complex is a murderous, rampaging global entity of destruction. So what can we expect? Collectivism begets collectivism, folks. Anyway, for those just tuning in, John Bolton has been fired. Make sure to press like on this video to help us get into the algorithm, because as you can see, we have 104 people watching out of 133,000 people. Talk about crazy. How does that make any sense, guys? Shadow banning. There's guys with 50,000 subscribers rather than 133,000 subscribers that have thousands of viewers watching live on this exact same story right now with lesser quality. Come on, this is ridiculous. Anyway, let's get to the comments. Make sure to send super chats if you want your comments to go to the top, and we'll read your question on air. We will be wrapping up soon because we are at an hour and 54 minutes. Then Swampy McGee says, World Alternative Media, collectivism begets collectivism. Absolutely. But like I said, that's how the paradigm works. You create a problem, you create fear and disorder among the masses, you divide them against each other, distracting them from the real enemies, you muzzle media, you muzzle information flow, and then you get people to be restless and they're scared, and you come in fear-mongering and getting people to agree out of just because they want mommy and daddy government to protect them, to wars and destruction and murder and massacring and the continuation of this paradigm. So problem, reaction, solution, repeat. Over and over again throughout history. That's a Hegelian dialectic in a nutshell. So anyway, for those interested, we do have a Bitcoin to tip if anyone is interested in helping independent media stay alive as we get ripped apart by the seams by shadow banning. We are about to break under 100 people watching here on YouTube right now out of 133,000 people, and it is brutal. WS says, keep up the solid reporting, bro. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. If anything should concern us, it is the destruction of independent media going forward, because it stops us from being able to spread these stories, talk about the real news, and actually have that conversation with the audience. You have cut and paste propaganda news without independent media, and it's more important than ever because YouTube, even if the videos have very few views compared to the independent medias, what comes up when you look up these stories on YouTube in the search? All mainstream media. We have been cut down 80% since January and February in viewership because YouTube decides to only recommend our videos mostly on makeup tutorials and toy reviews in order to ensure that we do not get seen, because they are afraid, because they're getting to the precipice of this order, and they know they will fall just like the Roman Empire did before them. As I recently reported on, it's just like the days of Diocletian under the Roman Empire. They will fall. The deficit spending to keep up with wars and to prop up the system and prop it up with more of the government that created the problem in the first place. And maybe people will think maybe this shiny thing over here will help. Price controls, wage controls, all that kind of stuff. And it led to the fall of Rome as they printed currency out of thin air. Well, coined it anyway, and then started doing coin clipping. We see coin clipping today with products in stores going down in size and quantity, but the price staying the same. That's inflation in a nutshell, folks, and that's why homelessness is skyrocketing. And the military-industrial complex depends on the financial-industrial complex worldwide, the Federal Reserve, etc., and vice versa. So it's more important than ever that we keep this information war going on in our favor, so we can combat this evil, destructive, disgusting, psychopathic move by the establishment to continuously pile on establishment on top of establishment in order to create this global community of complete control, pushing people into fear, chaos, order out of chaos, and of course, they are pushing people into more dependency, because dependency, is very useful for the government, for the military-industrial complex. Anyways, for those just tuning in, John Bolton was fired / resigned. There's conflicting stories there, as I mentioned. And of course, there's that fight, that very much semantic fight as this political article says. Trump and Bolton offer conflicting accounts on his White House exit. And of course, Brian Kilmeade on Fox News was given information as well that said that as a matter of fact, from John Bolton in a text anyway, said that he will be coming out with more information. He disagrees with what Trump says. He has been countering it, and there will be drama. Like the soap opera that is politics, folks, that's the way it always works. So we can expect that. We can expect book deals. We can expect all of that nonsense, and this is far from the end. But this is, of course, very much breaking news. Josh Marshall on Twitter says, "Don't let anyone tell you that canning John Bolton isn't a good thing." Yes, Trump is an epic clown, and he probably did it for self-serving reasons, but it's still good. Okay, so whatever that belief system might be, this Josh Marshall guy should probably tell, because he seems to be on the left anyway, or he might be on the right. I shouldn't characterize people based on that, because there's more than just left or right or Trump or no Trump. But he's saying that he should probably pass it on to George Takei, who ultra-leftist, who's just suddenly pushing John Bolton like John Bolton's a victim, even though he's victimized millions of people around the world. He's a crazy war hawk psychopath. So good riddance to him. But anyway, Matthew Dowd says, "I'm no fan of John Bolton, but I would trust his explanation of his exit far more than anything out of the White House." I don't trust anything out of the White House, but I don't trust anything out of John Bolton. I don't think that's semantics at that point. Tom Wright says, "A threat on John Bolton. This was inevitable. For many months, Trump wanted to pivot to striking deals with America's enemies, Taliban, Iran, North Korea, even Russia, in the run-up to the election. Pompeo was willing to accept this to shape it. Bolton was not and sought to sabotage it. Bolton survived the summer because it was the summer. Not much happening, but he was unlikely to survive long into the fall. He did not know how we would leave. Some thought he would cling on to run interference, and Trump dislikes personal confrontation, but it was unsustainable." Tom Wright continues on saying, "How it happened is of great consequence. While everyone was waiting for Jim Mattis to speak out, Bolton has actually walked through that door. His tweet disrupting Trump's account and his active outreach to media today suggests he will not take this lying down." This sets the stage for a GOP civil war over foreign policy. I don't know. If the challenge was coming from the center, the Tom Cottons and Lindsey Grahams of the world would stand foursquare behind Trump. It is much harder if it is from Trump's right and on an issue they care about, Iran. You see the beginnings of that today with tweets from Ted Cruz and other Republicans. As Trump is criticized, he will do what he always does, go on the attack against Bolton and his allies, worsening the split. Meanwhile, full steam ahead on Rouhani, Taliban, etc. On Bolton's replacement, Trump needs someone who will help implement his agenda, but he has a choice: go for a seasoned professional or a TV talk show personality. With Bolton, these overlapped, although the latter was more important. If Trump sees his North Korea diplomacy as a model, he could choose someone like Steve Biegun, who Pompeo would presumably support too. His appointment would be widely welcomed by both parties. If Trump wants a personal advocate and pure Trumpian, he could go with someone like Douglas McGregor of the Tucker Carlson show. I do not think he will go with Rick Grinnell, who shares Bolton's views but lacks his bureaucratic experience / skills. Basically skills in organized crime. Trump also has a fixation with credentials. He needs his senior appointees to be seen as qualified. And finally, Tom Wright finishes by saying, that rules out the Gorkas of the world. McGregor would cross this bar for Trump because his military experience. Bottom line, this is actually a big deal substantively and politically. So I want to take that and run with it because he mentioned Gorka, but Gorka made a kind of a statement that concerned me a little bit earlier today. He said, NSA Ambassador John Bolton may be moving on, and that's okay, but we have a great option, Mike Pompeo. He could run the State Department and be real Donald Trump's national security advisor, just like Kissinger had both jobs, and he'd be much better than Kissinger was. Well, Gorka, that's a terrible idea, and of course Pompeo said today when asked, no, I will not go easy on Iran. I will continue to push on Iran and bring the pressures up. So that's not ending anytime soon, folks. That is only going to perpetuate. And wars aren't going to magically end now that that psychopathic piece of trash, John Bolton, is out. Whether he was fired, whether he resigned, it doesn't matter. He's out, which is good. But the warmongering shall continue. The military-industrial complex doesn't just walk away or lie down easy. And, of course, Bolton's going to get a book deal, etc. That's the way this works. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone tuning in for this. Again, check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. Press like on this video if you haven't already. It helps us get around the algorithm. It definitely helps a lot just pressing like. And we can really use that help by supporting on a monthly basis. $5 or more a month on Subscribestar allows you to get free, or well, not free, but $5 a month or more allows you to get content that you will not see on YouTube. And this is subscriber only content on Subscribestar. We can also talk on places like Float.app. Float.app is the new social media that's replacing Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr. It's replacing Reddit. It's replacing Twitch and all these social media giants that have been destroying and completely shadow banning us. Like they've taken us down 80% here on YouTube, destroying our ability to reach people. As you see, 95 people out of 133,000 people watching. But with that said, we need your help more than ever, and Float.app also allows us to have a Patreon alternative, so you can subscribe or pledge monthly in crypto. $1, that's all it takes. Patreon, GoFundMe, Subscribestar, $1 a month. That's all it takes to keep us independent media alive. Imagine if everyone did it. It would change everything. We would destroy the mainstream media. We would overtake it. Does $1 mean that much to you a month? That's all I have to ask in regards to that. Also, of course, as per usual, I have to bring this up. We have a Bitcoin address, so make sure to tip us if you wish. And we really appreciate your help in any way possible. That Bitcoin address, there's other crypto addresses in the description of this video, so make sure to check that out as well. Again, we have breaking news today. John Bolton has been fired or he resigned. Who cares? The point is, what I do care about is he is out. He is a psycho, a warmonger, good riddance, that piece of trash. He's going to get a book deal. He's probably going to be replaced by another horrible person. There's cleaning up of Trump's image going into the next election. Of course, that is going to happen. Beads Bong says Pompeo is his replacement. Possibly that is what Sebastian Gorka has been pushing, and of course Trump very much respects Sebastian Gorka's viewpoints. And of course also today we have Mike Pompeo making a statement alongside Mnuchin, which John Bolton was supposed to join in on, by the way, saying that he will keep the pressures on Iran. So this isn't ending anytime soon, guys. It's just, that's what we see when it comes to the paradigm that is government. By the way, I just felt my house shake here, and it turns out we just had a 4.5 magnitude earthquake. I thought I felt something here. It's always interesting when there's an earthquake live on YouTube here. All right, there we go. Yeah, all right, just got a little earthquake. It's breaking here. You heard it here first, guys. My dad is writing in the comments here, Wham attracts smart people for the most part. I hope to. Yeah, I think, well, the people watching this, if you're watching this, you've already gotten past a big step, even if you disagree with me, to get around the paradigm, the propaganda, the indoctrination, the continuation of the public school system, which is the mainstream media, which is pushing themselves to the forefront of YouTube lately, stopping people from being able to actually get their message across in independent media, which is why we need you more than ever right now. So support independent medias, whether myself, Press for Truth, We Are Change. We need you guys. Super chats help us stay alive. GoFundMe, Patreon. Without those, we are done. And one day you'll tune into YouTube and all you'll see is Fox News, CNN, BBC, etc. And we will be gone and you'll wonder what happened to us. Well, also, by the way, email us at worldalternativemedia@gmail.com with subject line yes, and we'll add you to our newsletter and our email list so that we ensure that once we are inevitably deleted from YouTube, which we will be, it goes without saying, they will delete our channel probably within the next year or two, probably in the next year, really, especially leading into the election. We need you guys to, we need a way to contact you guys when we shift over to the next thing, which is why I'm on Minds, BitChute, I'm on PocketNet, I'm on Float.app as @Josh Sigurdsson, as well as @Wham, @WAM. We need you guys. You're the only way that independent media will prevail. You're the only way that will avoid wars and spread the information necessary to avoid the further restriction of free will, the destruction of free will, and the enslavement of the masses. You are the change you wish to see, folks. Jethro Harwinson, Australian, $2.99. Thank you, Jethro. That's awesome. You're awesome. We appreciate you guys. You're the ones that are keeping us up and running. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that. It's the only way we can really survive this calamity that is the shadow banning of independent media channels, the demonetization. And by the way, today, the video I posted earlier this morning, make sure to check it out if you haven't already. On the dolmens of Spain, the ancient sites in Spain there that I did a very well-edited documentary-style report on the ground. It cost me a lot of money producing those things, and I'm in a lot of debt because of it. I'm trying to bring people great information, free content, and we need those donations to be able to do that, to be able to do any of this, for me to be able to work 18 hours a day, for me to be able to wake up at 8 a.m. and then see suddenly all over the news, John Bolton fired 1 minute before I woke up, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta get ready and half asleep after 4 hours of sleep, get this done. So anyway, Samuel Manson, $2 in the super chat and says, are you using Gmail as throwaway because Google? Well, we're collecting emails. We are using Gmail, we're using others, but I mean, the Gmail just helps us be more easy to remember, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we shouldn't use Gmail. I know where you're coming from there. And but anyway, we still have your emails regardless of when our channel is taken down. So we'll still be able to, regardless of our Gmail account being deleted, we'll still have the ability to reach you guys. If you send an email, subject line, yes, to worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. The only way we stay alive, and again, thank you so much, Samuel. That's awesome. You are helping us huge. $1, $2 a month. That's all it takes for you guys to keep independent media alive and for us to be able to defeat the mainstream media. But without people just willing to give a single dollar, a single $2, an entire month, without that, we are going to be done, and we'll be no more. And one day they'll tune into YouTube, and you'll only see mainstream medias popping up on your newsfeed, which probably already are because it's so shadow banned, and you'll never hear from any of us again. And what was that line? You don't know what you got till it's gone. I don't know. We do a lot of work to post free content every single day, and we really don't want to have to charge for content, though we do have subscriber-only content at Subscribestar. Samuel Mann says, I try at least once a week to donate to you, Josh. I want to do well. I want you to do well. Thank you so much, Samuel. See, you're the people with a passion that keep us going and stop the narrative from being completely disrupted, completely destroyed by the military-industrial complex, by the Federal Reserve, by the governments of the world, who want nothing more than to push you into servitude, talk down to you like a child, indoctrinate you into slavery, and make you stupid and dependent. That's what they want of you. You guys know better. You guys are standing up, and we need you guys to help in any way you can to keep these independent medias alive. So again, we're gonna Banana 2014 Twitter says, do you have your email address up there, Josh? Yep, I'll put it again, worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. Send subject line yes, and we'll add you to our email list so that we can find you when we get deleted. But anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna get ready to tune out here. Again, we do take crypto tips. Makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate it. And you guys will destroy the mainstream media. But all it takes is a single $1 a month. Imagine that. Or pressing like on this video, or sharing the video, helping us get around the algorithm, sharing all the videos that we post on YouTube. You're the only ones that can do it. We can talk, we can put out the information, but you are the people that will manage to keep us alive and stop us from being completely deleted from time. New digital book burning, to say the least. 80 people left watching out of 133,000 people. I think that's my cue. So again, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it. You guys have been awesome. We are going to be going to Turkey right away. An awesome donor is sending us to Turkey. We're going with them in the next week or so to cover a bunch of amazing sites around Turkey. If you want to sponsor one of my trips, I want to go to Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, again, another one of those places that's being heavily targeted, and it's disgusting. They just want to destroy all the most important places to history and places that people on the ground are completely innocent, and they're killing innocent people after arming and funding the bad guys that they go after in the first place. It's so sick. Anyway, Hijink says, Josh, you're awesome. If I'm ever not dirt poor, we'll send what I can your way. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Again, anything helps. Into the Fire says, great work, Josh. Thanks for all you do. Thank you for watching. But yeah, what was I getting at? I think that going forward, we need to do everything we can to get around this algorithm. Sharing, liking, all those things, very important. Chris Ellerson, I will be talking about, I got a video going up on Trudeau in the next day or so. So stay tuned for that. And I think I got another video going up later tonight, but make sure to check out my most recent video up on YouTube because it was the worst shadow ban video I've seen in 5 years on YouTube. Worst performing video in the first hour than any video I've seen in 5 years. We are at bare minimum. We have the lowest subscriber rate ever. Even our first month on YouTube, we had more subscribers coming in within 30 days than we do now. So we need you guys. We need you guys more than ever. So yeah, our email send subject line, yes, we'll do our best to keep up with you on as much of a regular basis as you can. Press to be notified, press like on the video, and come back to our channel as much as possible because YouTube probably won't tell you we're here and alive still. Chakra T says, good video, Josh. Thank you very much. And again, I'm going to Iraq, Iran. I want to go to Syria as well, actually, though against a lot of people's wishes. But anyway, I'm going to Turkey right away. I want to go to Jordan. I want to go to Egypt. I want to go to Peru and Bolivia. There's lots of places I want to go. I'm going to be at Anarchadelphia 2019 in a few days, actually. Next week or so, a few days, 5 days, 4 days, I don't know. 2 days, I guess. Anyway, I'll be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, speaking at Anarchadelphia 2019. Come and say hi. Get your tickets. Promo code WAM will save you 5% on your tickets. Links in the description below the video. And, of course, all the different ways that you can help. Donate, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content. Float.app. I'm there at Josh Sigurdsson. So find Float.app. Seriously, guys, get an account. It's easier than anything, just getting an account. It'll take 2 seconds. And it's an incredible alternative to basically everything all at once. And they're just starting to roll it out, so they have so much more to come. So get on there. You won't get shadow banned. I'm friends with the guy who created it, and he's consulted with me on a lot of that. So again, thank you all for watching. John Bolton is out, but he will be replaced. And of course, out with the old boss, in with the new boss, same as the old boss. Unfortunate, but true. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdsson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.